With Gilgamesh coming up and it being one of the free options of the Fate collab, today I'm here with the is Gilgamesh worth your general pick and also mainly worth your Jades in a form of vertical investment. Is it really worth going for his Lightcone? And by that, I mean doing the 200 pulls to actually get it. It's a lot weirder to do this because Gilgamesh, as you probably know, isn't necessarily like a no-brainer pick as opposed to something like Emiya would be if you had the potential to build this team, especially with all the stuff that did happen to Gilgamesh throughout the set betas. However, I am still doing my classic fashion. Is he overall worth it? So we're going to be going similar to the other ones, going over his kit, things to consider around his banner and also upcoming, then mainly about vertical investment as that's the main point, and finally if he's worth your general pick, and also generally if you want to vertically invest in him if you are in the category of picking him. Do know I probably will have a future video closer to the release of the Fate collab for whether it's worth it to pick Emiya at any investment or Gilgamesh at E0. Stuck grinding in Honkai Starl? Need Stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Starl or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Starl top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. When you head over to the page, all you need to do is pick the pack you do want, enter your UID and server, and buy now. If you want codes and coupons to apply, be sure to create an account for proper savings. USD is the recommended usage currency for best saving. Once everything is set, you can see the savings you're about to get. Want even extra savings? Be sure to use code PRESR at checkout for 5% off. Perfect for last minute pulls or surprising a friend. Click on the link in the description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So Gilgamesh, first we're going to go over his kit. So Gilgamesh is the newest addition as a energy related DPS, primarily meaning most of his damage is primarily locked to his ultimate. He has a skill with decent multipliers that does pretty solid damage as long as he is buffed on the team. But we do primarily look at, as I mentioned, the ultimate. This is one of the highest multipliers in the game of 400% to all enemies and 10 instances of damage with each being 100% of his attack to a random enemy. So 10 instances of 100% of his attack bounce. That is insane. You can imagine how much that would shred at single target. It's a very, very high multiplier of 1400, which is just really, really high. Gilgamesh is also able to increase his own ultimate damage by 40% when someone on the team uses their ultimate for 3 turns. The idea is at the beginning of the battle, you want to get 10 points of interest for Gilgamesh, which is gained by someone else attacking or just taking an action in general. Then you reach 10 points of interest. Before you do reach that, he's just going to automatically use his basic attack. Anytime his turn is up, once you hit 10, he will enter the interest peak state, where now he can only use a skill when his turn does trigger. The point of interest now is each stack is going to increase his speed by 10%. That does reset every time he uses his skill. So you have a bunch of actions building up his interest stacks. Get a bunch of speed as much as you can so his turn does come up quicker. Finally, you use a skill, it resets the stack. Why does it work like that? I could not tell you. And then is also unique joint attack, which is with Saber. You're able to gain charges by Saber or Gilgamesh using any attack. Reaching 8 stacks will launch the joint follow-up attack, doing 400% of Gilgamesh's attack and 600% of Saber's attack. Gilgamesh gets 3 points of interest and Artoria will regenerate 120 energy, and the next time Saber uses her ultimate, the damage of that ultimate will be increased to 200% of the original value. So it gives Gilgamesh some interest, so 30% speed, and Artoria a lot of energy for her next ultimate, and then the next time you use your ultimate after that actual joint attack, it's going to do significantly more. With the changes that did happen, it's a bit slower to get it, especially since it's still at 8 stacks, so it's a little bit annoying and you don't see it too often. But once you do proc it, Saber does do a big hit with her next ultimate. 200% of the original damage on an ultimate that already hits hard. Very nice. The bit of interest it gives for Gil is kind of whatever though. And the primary ways to fill his ultimate. This is via other people's ultimates. Someone else using their ultimate will give Gilgamesh 30% of the energy consumed at that time. He has a pretty big requirement of 360. So that's going to be the primary way you want to do it. You want to have people that have high energy that can funnel him a lot. Or characters that can spam it, such as Artoria, who has kind of both, as he is practically made for her and they work with each other, or even someone like Mortanix Blade who gets to use his ultimate a lot. Gilgamesh using his ultimate gives him 2 points of interest. Other allies using their ultimate also gives 2 interest points to Gilgamesh. So anyone on the team using ultimate gives him 20% speed. Gilgamesh can also get 25% crit damage for each interest stack up to 6 times. So up to 150% crit damage, which is pretty damn good. Gilgamesh also being on the field will increase the team's attack by 20% and crit damage by 20%. Exceeding 140 points of max energy will make each excess point increase attack and crit damage by an additional 1% up to a maximum of 100%. However, really not anyone is going to get the full benefit besides Gilgamesh himself and also Saber. Also, his own actual kit provides himself 30% defense ignore when he uses his skill, which allows him to just gain the King's Acknowledgement buff, which makes him ignore 30% of the target's defense. That is the general idea of how he does play. You have other characters in the team funneling him ultimate, then he gets a big attack off. For Artoria team specifically, you're trying to build up that actual joint attack, even though it's something you unfortunately don't see too often. When it does proc, it does a lot of stuff for mainly Artoria. Now, other things to consider. Now with the reruns it being officially confirmed, the first half we do have 4.4 by the way, Evernight, Sparksy, and also Permanente Zanheng. All three of these characters are quite valuable. Sparksy, a lot of people probably did end up skipping her just in case Silverwolf SP didn't end up using her, and turns out she did. So anyone who did miss out on that chance probably wants to go for it. And also Sparksy herself has a really good E2 and also a really nice Lightcone. So vertical investment for anyone on that Silverwolf Elation team is going to be wanted, especially since as of now you do want that E2 Sparksy if you do own an E2 Silverwolf, as otherwise you can't fully utilize the E2 Silverwolf. That has to wait till the next Elation teammate or just E2 Sparksy. So in general, valuable character for a main push unit, and also pretty strong as a main DPS, to be honest, as long as you have Yagong and Sparkle. Then we have Evernight, is still very valuable, not really able to run Mono Remembrance without Evernight. She kind of holds that together. Insane, and I mean insane vertical investment, super broken E1 for the Remembrance team and just in general. Even for a main DPS, it kind of fixes the single target problem that she herself has that like someone like Castros doesn't have too much of. Lightcone provides a bunch of stuff, and for main DPS, E2 is just absurdly broken. Still one of the best DPS E2s in the game. Then Permanente Zanheng, he was given out for free. If you didn't get him because you started later, then you might want him because he's still a really good shielder. His Lightcone is also very nice. His E1 is a very nice rare all-type res pen buff, and his E2 is also very good with 200% shield value, more actions for Soul Dragon, and also an instant action for that Soul Dragon. So just a lot of stuff packed in that first half is going to be already difficult on its own. On the second half, we have Saridra, Anaxa, and Aventurin. This one's not nearly as stacked as the actual first half. Saridra, you kind of just pick her up if you do have the best in slot teammates. Funny enough, if you have an Noxa or you're going for an Noxa, you want Saridra. That's already right there for you. But if you also have Fine on, if you also main the Noble Fleur Zele, those are primarily the characters you would want to definitely pick up Saridra for. So for anyone running those or planning on pulling a Noxa, then there you go. On Noxa's side, he kind of wants the team like a long time, well, not a long time ago, like a year ago when he came out, the idea of him being able to be used with all these teammates, that was kind of his biggest selling point. And now you kind of just want to have the Cyrene Saridra team. And if you have it, you can still very much low cost with him because he's just that good as long as you have the team. So the value is still there, but that's just if you actually have the right teammates, you have Cyrene free and ready to use with him, you're already having Saridra or you're willing to go for her, then that would be the case to pull Noxa. Otherwise, you probably are not going to bother. Venturing, I really don't got to say anything. Like, he's still a fine sustain, especially since he's like the only other shielder, but it's not really a character worth pulling, at least until he probably gets a Noble Flare. So yeah, first half reruns stacked, second reruns not so much, a lot more situational. And then for the future characters, so we have Robin SP, Remembrance Wind, and Aventurin Wayflare, or just Aventurin SP, being Quantum Elation. Robin, that info is a lot more shaky. We don't know if she's going to be a Himiko teammate or a Remembrance teammate for primarily main DPS Evernight. That's like the two little instances of what we do think. One is for Himiko SP, one is for the Remembrance team at main DPS Evernight primarily. So if you use either or you're going to get Himiko and then you already have Remembrance, you definitely want to look out for that just in case, as I can definitely see that being a very big addition. Then Aventurin SP, this character is actually a lot more prominent on what you should consider when it comes to Gilgamesh specifically, because Gilgamesh's other team is the Blade Veil team, Astral Mortanix Blade. Fundamentally, Gilgamesh is better on the team, but that's just because the wheelchair is so strong and a lot better than Artoria teams, hence why it still overall outperforms, but Aventurin is seeming to be the actual DPS of the team. And since Gilgamesh doesn't really do much for that team, especially after his changes, unfortunately, Aventurin, as long as he is for that team, is guaranteed to absolutely maul Gilgamesh in that spot. So Gilgamesh is kind of going to be just pushed out to the Artoria team. That's kind of going to be his only slot when Aventurin does come out. But of course, that would depend if you really care to actually have the team at its best, or you're just kind of pulling Blade Bear for Gilgamesh specifically. That, of course, changes player to player. Finally, cycling back to Gilgamesh, going back to his vertical investment. So his E1, this is practically what you want. No matter the team you're running him on, you want that E1. It gives him the defense ignore effect to the entire team. So the King's Acknowledgement, the 30% defense ignore, is now for the entire team. Defense ignore is going to be great for any team he's putting himself on, especially on Bladeville, as that becomes a full 100%, 40% from Asheville, 30% from Mortanix, and now 30% from Gil. But also for the main fact, it increases his attack by 60%, which is a good buff, and also 40 energy when he uses his skill. This helps a lot with cycling his ultimate. Without it, he already gets his ultimate so slow with it, to be honest, that without it, you're gonna see a lot less ultimate potential. E2, on the other hand, isn't necessarily that great. 5 interest points going into battle so you can get it a lot quicker, and an additional 5 when using ultimate. His skill multiplier does increase primary target by 100% and damage multiplier to adjusting targets by 50%, so more damage from the skill. That is kind of it. While not inherently bad, it's also just generally not worth it, so the best point to stop is just the E1. Lightcone, on the other hand, this one is a bit weird. 18% attack, 10% energy regen rate, and also able to increase ultimate damage for the wearer by 0.2% for every 1 energy consumed, up to 72%. And when the wearer enters combat or uses ultimate, gives them a buff for 3 turns, which will increase the team's crit damage by 24%. So 18% attack and 10% energy regen for Gilgamesh, alongside 72% ultimate damage and 24% crit damage for the team. The attack is low, the damage percent is alright. It's actually pretty good for the damage percent, since 72% is a lot. The energy regen you would think is really good on a character like this, but since his actual energy sources are primarily fixed, the energy regen is kind of just useless. So that's a whole just wasted line there. Unfortunately, a good part is probably put into that, which is why this Lightcone overall is pretty mid. And then the 24% crit damage for the team, that's also really whatever. So his Lightcone, on the other hand, is not inherently that great. Finally, should you bother picking Gilgamesh? This is really the only reason. If you want to use Artoria in any way, shape, or form, yes, that's going to be it. You want to get Gilgamesh, and you especially want to get his E1. That dupe is actually the best dupe you can get for that team specifically, and just Gilgamesh in general. If you want to use Saber in any way, shape, or form, maybe you already have her and you want to revive her, then you want to have Gilgamesh. You want to pick the free one, try to get the E1 especially, because without the E1, while he still is going to be Saber's best teammate, you still really just want that E1. And I'm gonna be honest, in any other case, I don't necessarily recommend him other than collection. Inherently, he doesn't really work anywhere else besides Bladeville, and that's just because the wheelchair is so strong that he himself is getting wheelchaired. It's just worse to put him on the team than someone like Tribby. You can honestly even use like E2 Cyrene and get better results, as long as the sustain is like Hyacine. And then with the Venturian coming up, that's probably gonna be on that team. He's just gonna mod Gilgamesh in any way. Then when it comes to non-teams, Mortanix Blade is just a necessity. You really just can't use Gilgamesh much outside of it. Like even like an E6 Gilgamesh without Blade or without Artoria on just like a hyper carry team is honestly kind of just yikes. And so if you don't really have that, I would recommend, if you like already have like your Emiya team ready, maybe you already have his E1, you can honestly even consider his E2. The only time I wouldn't consider it is if you're going for E3, because that's really just whatever. Unless you want to eventually go for Emiya's E6. If you're going for the E3, then go ahead and pick that instead. However, if you're just going for E3 just for the sake of Gilgamesh being not that great, then I would just say pick up Gilgamesh for the collection, honestly. Again, you can use him on Bladeville until the stuff is done, but most people probably have Tribby, especially E1 Tribby, which is just significantly better. And if you don't, you're just waiting for a Venturian SP at that point, and he at E0 is probably going to mod Gilgamesh at any investment. So it's really for people that actively want to use Saber, if you want to pull her for the actual whole new team, if you really care that much, or if you already have her on your account and you want to revive her, that's really it. Now, the last part I want to talk about, should you actually go for the 200 for his Lightcone? Honestly, as I mentioned, the Lightcone isn't that great. You can see pretty good results with just running the Aeon Lightcone on like an Artoria team on Gilgamesh, or even Artoria's Lightcone if you happen to have a spare one. I wouldn't go out my way to do 200 pulls for this Lightcone whatsoever. However, if you do have a goal that lets you get 200 and then you get a Lightcone inevitably, talking about this kit sometimes just makes me want to die, so yeah, forgive me. Then as long as you are going for a different goal in mind, be it reruns, be it for Himiko, be it for Rin even, in that case, I would recommend picking it just because it is in fact his best in slot, and the more investment you put in Gilgamesh, so the more dupes, the better it gets. However, it's just not that great opposed to the other options, and is generally not worth dumping a whole pity in even. So it's really just a bonus of getting the 200 pulls. If you're able to do that by pulling for other goals, i.e. Evernight, Sparksy, Saridra, Anaxa, the new Himiko, Rin, whatever the hell, then of course go ahead, pick it, then you have it. Otherwise, I honestly would not go a whole 200 pulls just for it. Like, I wouldn't force myself to be like, yeah, I'm going to get, like, X dupe in some other character. Like, I'm going to force myself to get, let's say, Evernight, and I don't have an actual, like, team for her, and I'm just going to get, like, her Lightcone, boom, that. Maybe I'll consider it in the future, and you're just lying to yourself. Just because you want to do the 200 pulls for the Lightcone. I would not do that at all. Lightcone is just generally not worth the 200 pulls unless you're already doing the 200 pulls. Look at it as more of a freebie. But that is it for the Is Gilgamesh Worth It? You can kind of see his value is very, very minuscule. He's kind of just there for the Artoria teams. And the extra Lightcone at 200 is just for people that were already pulling on the update. Otherwise, I don't necessarily recommend going for it. Teams are very restrictive. He just has the Artillery team as the best in slot. For Bladeville, he holds the team back, but he's able to be used there since the team is just that strong. And by them, I mean Bladeville themselves. But Aventurine is most likely just going to mog that spot anyways. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, drop a like, we greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this along with all the tips to start our content. And I don't want to see any comments saying I'm dogging on Gilgamesh because I don't like him. Gilgamesh, I like this guy more than Aventurine, dude. You guys don't know the pain that this kit brings me as a massive Gilgamesh fan. Somehow Hoyo has figured out the one way to make me not E6 S5 Gilgamesh with no questions asked. It's such a tragedy. I'm going to get him and pretend this collab never happened. Anyway, again, hope you found the video helpful. Peace out.